Imagine spending 3 weeks perfectly tuning an AI prompt. You finally get it writing in your exact brand voice. Beat. Then a coworker logs in. They ask for a simple social carousel. And suddenly, your brand sounds like a medieval poet. 2 sec silence. That's prompt drift. It's quietly destroying marketing teams from the inside out. Beat. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're exploring a paradigm shift. We're looking at the architect's guide to scalable AI marketing systems.
Right, we're moving away from random, isolated prompting. We're basically shifting from being prompt writers to becoming systems architects.
And we're going to learn how to build organized, reusable AI infrastructures. We'll be examining 2 foundational tools today. First is Claude Design, Beat. That's a visual workspace for AI-generated layouts.
Yeah, and the second is Claude Skills. Those are saved instructions for repeatable AI tasks. We're going to unpack how they interlock.
The baseline reality of marketing has fundamentally changed. The core problem is no longer content generation speed.
Exactly. I mean, raw generation speed is virtually infinite at this point.
The actual bottleneck now is structural consistency. Beat. It's about maintaining a unified identity.
Let's look at the average workflow today. A team uses one massive prompt to write a brief. Then they jump to a totally different tool for landing pages.
And another disconnected tool builds their email sequences. They're essentially hiring a new freelancer every single day.
Right, and forcing that freelancer to blindly guess the brand voice.
That's a brilliant way to frame it. The brand voice just fractures across all these different tools. Someone inevitably has to manually rewrite the output.
Yeah, and after a few weeks, the entire workflow just collapses. It devolves into this massive, unmanageable mess of copy pasting. You have disconnected text files floating around everywhere.
I have to admit something here. Beat. I still wrestle with prompt drift myself. I find myself constantly tweaking and nudging instructions. I'm just trying to claw back that original tone. It's incredibly frustrating to manage.
Oh, you're definitely not alone in that struggle. It happens to everyone relying on raw chatbot interfaces. The fundamental issue is treating AI like a vending machine. You put a prompt in, you get an asset out.
Teams need to transition to treating AI like an operating system.
Exactly. They need to establish shared structural rules. They need a cohesive backbone for their operations. Claude Design and Claude Skills function as that backbone. You stop writing isolated requests for single tasks.
So you build reusable design systems and skill libraries instead.
Yeah, which you can then share across your entire team.
Let's crystallize this underlying problem before we move on. Why do isolated AI tools fail teams in the long run?
Well, because a tool without a persistent memory requires constant human correction. Workflows become totally unmanageable without shared structural rules governing them.
So isolated prompts decay, but structured systems compound over time.
They compound beautifully. It completely alters your daily operational reality.
Let's dive into the actual mechanics of building this.
Yeah.
How do we physically organize this new AI brain?
We start with incredibly strict file organization. Scalable automation always requires a perfectly clean foundation. You're going to create one master project directory.
This becomes the single source of truth for the brand.
Inside that main directory, you need 4 very specific folders. The first one is your context folder. This is the absolute bedrock of the entire system.
I imagine this holds the strategic foundation documents. Beat. Things like your ideal customer profiles and core brand strategy.
It holds all of that, plus real historical examples. You put your best past campaigns in there. You include top-performing landing pages and successful email sequences.
You're giving the AI concrete reference points,
Yeah.
like stacking Lego blocks of data.
Concrete examples always outperform abstract instructions. The second folder you build is your skills folder. This contains your specific operational workflow rules. It's typically divided into brand, function, and specialty skills.
Let's break those categories down slightly. Function skills would handle the actual daily deliverables.
Right. Instructions for writing a newsletter or structuring a slide deck. Specialty skills handle your very narrow, restrictive rules. Think about strict healthcare compliance language or technical SEO optimization.
And the third folder is your templates folder.
This folder holds reusable structural assets. When you build a great slide layout in Claude Design, it goes here. The final folder is simply for your campaign outputs. That's where the system deposits the finished, generated content.
Setting this up feels incredibly methodical. And is basically creating the anatomy of a digital employee. But an empty folder structure doesn't actually do anything.
That brings us to the system's true core. You create a simple text file called claud.md. You place this at the root of your project directory.
This file acts as a central nervous system.
Exactly. It tells Claude exactly how to navigate your folders. When you ask for a campaign, the AI checks this file first. It forces the AI to route its thinking through your rules.
It can't just blindly generate a generic response anymore.
No, it's constrained by the architecture you build.
But I'm thinking about the human element here. Teams get busy and tend to skip the tedious setup steps. I imagine if you skip populating that context folder, you're essentially giving the AI complete amnesia. It's just going to default back to generic internet speak.
That's exactly what happens. The system relies entirely on the density of your context. If you just upload a basic 2-page tone guide, the AI starves. It needs your specific taglines, value propositions, and historical data.
Let's solidify this for the listener. What happens if a team cuts corners on the context folder?
The output quality immediately degrades to an average internet baseline. The generated writing becomes incredibly hollow and disconnected from your identity.
Without deep context, the AI just hallucinates generic corporate buzzwords.
It hallucinates wildly, and then your team is back to manually rewriting everything.
Okay, so we have this beautifully organized folder structure, beat, but an empty house doesn't have a personality. How do we get the AI to stop sounding like a robot?
We have to engineer the brand voice skill first. This becomes the filtering layer for every single workflow.
It dictates how the system is allowed to speak.
Yeah, you don't just type "write casually" into a prompt. You ask Claude to analyze your entire context folder. You have it study your best-performing emails and articles. Then, it generates a highly structured, codified tone rulebook.
This rulebook lives permanently in your skills folder.
Yes. It contains your common vocabulary and preferred sentence structures. It lists the exact psychological angles your brand prefers to use.
It must also explicitly define what the AI should avoid. Beat, like using those painfully obvious robotic transition phrases.
Absolutely. You have to ban words like delve or moreover. You explicitly tell it to avoid over-explaining simple concepts. Once this skill is locked, every future output passes through it.
So the writing consistently sounds like your brand, Beat. I understand how it parses text documents to learn tone, but I have to push back here on the visual side. 2-sec silence. Writing is one thing. Can an AI really understand a brand's visual identity? It doesn't have eyes. It can't intuitively feel a design language.
It doesn't need to feel it. It just needs to parse the underlying math. This is where Claude Design becomes incredibly powerful. You use a specific project type called a design system.
You feed your visual assets into this workspace.
Right. You upload your logos, brand guidelines, and current landing pages. The AI doesn't just look at a picture. It extracts the literal hex codes for your brand colors. It measures the padding and spacing between your visual elements.
It's reverse engineering the CSS and design tokens.
Exactly. It identifies your typography hierarchy. It maps out your primary buttons versus your secondary text links. It mathematically categorizes your UI components and visual patterns.
It translates a visual feeling into structural data.
It takes about 15 minutes to run this extraction. It presents you with a codified, reusable visual system. You review the colors and the layout rules to ensure accuracy.
But you want to avoid endlessly tweaking things in the canvas. Beat. That can burn through processing tokens very quickly.
You only use the canvas to establish the core structure. Then you execute the most critical step in the entire process. You use the handoff to Claude Code feature.
You're exporting it as an active workflow asset. You aren't just downloading a static PDF guideline.
Yeah, this sends the complete design system straight into your folder architecture. Now, your other AI skills have direct access to visual rules.
Let's lock in the importance of this specific step. Why is that handoff to Claude Code so vital?
Because it bridges the gap between visual design and text automation. It allows your text-based skills to automatically apply your visual rules.
It turns a static design into a living, reusable workflow tool.
It makes the visual identity operational. Sponsor.
We have the central brain fully organized. We have the brand voice and the visual guidelines locked in. Let's look at how the system actually executes a campaign.
This is where the architectural prep work pays off. You start by triggering your campaign planning skill.
You run this directly inside your Claude Code interface.
Your brand voice and design system are already active in the background. You just provide a simple, high-level directive. You might say, create a product launch campaign for our new feature.
You tell it who the target audience is and the budget.
Right, and the skill takes over from there. It analyzes your context folder to understand past successful launches. It maps out a complete marketing funnel. It outlines the specific timeline and defines the core content angles.
It builds the strategy before it writes a single asset.
And it naturally follows your established brand structure.
Mm-hmm.
Once the brief is approved, you move to asset creation. Let's look at generating a social media carousel.
You need a visual framework for the carousel first.
You build a prototype layout inside Claude Design. You apply your active design system so the colors match perfectly. You finalize the spacing and the typography hierarchy for the slides.
Then you export that prototype into your templates folder.
And now you build a carousel design skill. When you trigger this skill, it reads the campaign brief. It pulls the approved messaging angles. Then it maps that text directly onto your visual template.
It generates platform-ready slides automatically. Beat. But AI carousels often get way too text-heavy. They tend to write entire paragraphs when dealing with educational content.
That's a very common failure point. AI wants to explain everything comprehensively. You have to aggressively constrain the skill instructions.
You have to force strict structural limits on the output.
You tell the skill to use a maximum of 20 words per slide. You mandate a strong hook on slide 1. You require exactly one core idea per slide. The visual system handles the look perfectly, but the content strategy still requires strict human parameters.
This structured approach extends into video content as well.
Oh, this is a massive shift for content scaling. You can generate lightweight, branded motion graphics automatically. You start by building an animated prototype inside Claude Design.
You give it strict visual style requirements, beat, like a dark AI-native aesthetic.
You specify clean typography and very minimalistic transitions. Then you request a 30-second product launch teaser.
You define the specific narrative arc you want. A problem hook, a product introduction, and a clear call to action.
Claude Design generates the storyboards and the animated scenes. It pulls the hex codes and fonts directly from your design system.
Whoa! Beat. Imagine scaling to fully branded motion graphics from a single brief. Beat. That completely rewrites the economics of social video.
It's an incredible capability. You export that animated project directly into your templates folder, then you build a specific motion design skill around it.
It obviously won't replace a professional motion designer for cinematic brand films.
No, it's not for Super Bowl commercials, but it's perfect for high-volume, branded social video tests. The mathematical consistency across all these different assets is the real advantage.
Let's review the constraint aspect before we move forward. How do you stop the AI from writing too much text on educational carousels?
You have to explicitly tighten the parameters inside the skill instructions. You must limit the word counts and force specific sentence structures.
Force shorter copy blocks to keep the AI from over-explaining.
Exactly. You have to keep the messaging incredibly punchy.
We now have all these individual automated assets working perfectly. Beat. But manually triggering 5 different skills still takes time. How do we orchestrate all of this for an entire team?
You graduate from individual skills to a campaign manager agent. This is the highest level of the architecture.
This agent acts as the operational director for the system.
It runs constantly inside Claude Code. You give the agent a single high-level business goal. For example, increase free trial signups for our enterprise tier.
You point it at the goal and step back.
The agent coordinates the entire folder structure automatically. It drafts the campaign brief using the planning skill.
Right.
It then triggers the presentation deck template.
It generates the social carousel and the video teaser.
Yeah. It even drafts the landing page copy using your brand voice. Now, the final outputs won't be absolutely perfect every time. You might need to adjust some awkward spacing on a slide. You might want to tweak a specific video transition timing.
But it consistently delivers a very strong 80% draft.
You refine the final 20% quickly. It truly feels like operating a well-oiled machine. You register this manager agent inside your caliude.md file.
The system now knows exactly when to trigger complex workflows. Beat. But how do you prevent this from breaking as the team grows?
You have to move the architecture into a shared environment. You can't keep these skills isolated on one person's local machine. You sync your entire skills folder to a central repository.
You use a shared team platform like a Notion skills library.
Right. Everyone on the team pulls their instructions from the exact same library. This makes strict version control incredibly important.
You have to treat marketing instructions like software updates.
You must update version numbers when you tweak a prompt. You add clear timestamps to every single skill document. You have to clearly mark which workflow is the current active version.
You don't want a junior writer accidentally using last year's brand voice.
That completely ruins consistency across collaborative campaigns. You can actually use Claude Code routines to automate this maintenance.
It scans your folder structure and syncs updates automatically.
It becomes a living internal AI infrastructure for your team. You stop trying to automate massive projects all at once. You build this architecture one reusable layer at a time.
You lock in the brand voice first, then you build the design system.
Then you populate the workflow skills. And finally, you orchestrate it all with the Campaign Manager agent.
Let's clarify the risk of scaling too casually. Why is version control so critical for AI skills?
Because outdated workflow rules inevitably bleed into new projects. Team members end up generating off-brand content that requires massive manual editing.
It prevents the team from using outdated instructions on new campaigns.
It keeps the entire department operating on the exact same logic.
The landscape of marketing is shifting rapidly beneath our feet. The real competitive advantage is no longer who can write the best individual prompts, 2-sec silence. It's who can build the most robust, reusable AI systems around those prompts.
Yeah, we're moving away from an era of chaotic manual creation. We're entering an era of deep architectural design.
We're building digital ecosystems that hold our identity. But this raises a fascinating question for the future. If our structural systems and tools can now perfectly mimic our brand voice, if they can instantly scale our visual identity across any medium, will the only true differentiator in tomorrow's marketing simply be the originality of the human ideas we feed into that context folder? 2-sec silence. Look at your own repetitive tasks today. Try to see them not as chores, but as the raw foundation for your first skill.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Catch you next time. Outro music.